Yeah, it's true. The public knows so little about what's going on behind the scenes, behind the barn doors at these horrifying facilities. We don't see the animals. Most people, the only time they encounter a chicken is when he's dead and in parts on a plate. So, it's very sad that that's the only time they encounter these beautiful, amazing creatures. But it's interesting because I've been vegan myself for 25 years. So I've been having these conversations for a long time about our food and about agriculture and animals. And it's been, kind of the same conversation for 20 or so years, but recently something has started shifting. And people have been saying things like, oh, well, but my eggs are free range, and my dairy is organic. And there's a lot going on here. One thing is that people are becoming more aware, which is a good thing. They're becoming more aware that that animals are suffering, that animals are in bad conditions in the food industry, that it's unhealthy, that it's bad for the environment. They're starting to learn these things, which is a good thing. But because myself and others as animal activists for all these years have been somewhat successful in getting the word out, the industry is now responding with a new marketing technique. And we're seeing all these labels on products: free range, cage-free, organic, all these things. And I did extensive research into these labels, and unfortunately there is very, very little difference between a commercial regular operation and these supposedly small scale alternative operations. I mean, there's so many different aspects to it, but basically there are inherent cruelties that just can't be wished away with a label. And there are certain things that happen in these industries, like for instance with chickens, no egg operation can profitably hatch their own chicks. So even no matter how humane they even want to be, they have to source their chicks from industrial hatcheries, and these places are just brutal places. People have no idea that the chicks are not born into the world in a loving, warm nest with a doting mother hen. No, not at all. They are born in these metal drawers and immediately thrust into a world of conveyor belts and machinery and being tossed around like canned goods. It's just brutal places, these hatcheries, and the male chicks in the egg industry don't grow quickly enough to be profitable for meat. The genetically bred broiler chickens that are bred for their meat can be ready for slaughter in 5 weeks. That short a time, boom, they are fat and so fully grown. But the egg layers are not. So the males in the egg laying industry are a waste product. Basically, they're not profitable enough to be raised for meat, so they're thrown away at birth. Millions of baby male chicks thrown away at the hatcheries, literally outside in the dumpsters, suffocating on the weight of their thousands of brothers, dying of dehydration and exposure. Sometimes they're just ground up alive. It's brutal, just brutal, and people have no idea that this beautiful little chick that in our society is, the symbol of innocence and gentleness that we see on a Hallmark card, are being killed by the millions in brutal ways. It's just horrendous, and this is, of course, no matter the label, even in cage-free and free range, and with free range, it means so very little. It just means the bird has to have access to the outside. This could still be a cage-free facility where it's just a windowless warehouse, where the birds are crowded in there, still debeaked. They're, breathing the ammonia of all the feces that they're in, because there's no ventilation, no light, no sunlight, no daylight, no dirt, it's just a gray, monotonous, horrifying world in these cage-free environments. And free range, all they have to do is open a door to a little 5 foot by 5 foot concrete patio that's so unappealing no bird would even want to go out there, and they can call that free range. So I could go on and on. There's really so little that the consumer knows, coming back to your question, and I think people, they want to do the right thing in their hearts. They really do. I think people really don't want to see animals suffer. I think the majority of people you walked up to would say that they love animals. They don't want to hurt them. And it does bother them when they hear about it. And that's why you hear so many people say, oh, I don't want to hear about it, I don't want to hear about it. Because they are bothered by it. So the industry is giving them an out. They're giving them exactly what they want, a label that says, oh, it's all okay now. It's all happy meat, it's happy eggs. And they're buying it, actually spending more money to appease their guilt. So, I think that people want to do the right thing, but really the right thing is we need to stop commodifying animals, stop seeing their bodies, their eggs, their dairy as food. Because as long as we're seeing those products as food, there's going to be exploitation and suffering of these animals. It's true. There is very little regulation on these labels. All the ones that I was mentioning, cage-free, free-range, sustainable, humane, all of these labels, a farmer, all they need to do is fill out a form and send it into the regulatory agency, whether it's the USDA or the FDA, and they are awarded these labels. There's no on-site inspection of the farm, and no one gets rejected. Basically, anyone can have these labels. They mean practically nothing. The only exception to that is organic. Organic does have some regulation. There is on-site inspection of the farms, but it's mostly geared towards the environmental connection, the environmental impact. And when it comes to the conditions of the animals, really there's so little difference. In organic, the only regulation is that the animal has to be fed organic feed, and it can't be given antibiotics or other medications, and also that they need access to the outside. Now, that access to the outside, like I was talking about in the chicken industry, is usually just a possibly little mud hole or concrete patio that that couldn't even fit all the birds from the thousands that are packed into this windowless warehouse area. So the access to the outside thing can basically mean nothing. And interestingly, like I did extensive research on my book, and when I went into the book, I was ready to basically say that, yeah, okay, so this label is a little better, but going vegan and plant-based is the best. Or this is a little better situation, but going vegan and plant-based is the best. I assumed I was going to be saying that over and over. Not the case. Not the case even in most situations. A lot of the environmental impact, the ethics, the animals, the conditions, it's either the same as a commercial operation, or in some cases it's worse. A great example of that is the dairy industry and organic. And this is organic. This is the one that actually does have some regulation behind it. When a cow is in these intensive milking situations where they're having to be artificially inseminated, kept pregnant, the baby's taken away at birth, they're milked so much more than they would be in nature, just giving so much more milk. It's very taxing on their bodies. They get often what's called mastitis. It's an infection of the udder. It can be very painful. The udder can swell, get open sores. The milk doesn't pass through as easy. There's pus and blockage. So it's very, very painful, mastitis, and it's very common. And usually in the dairy industry, what they do with the cows that have mastitis is they give them antibiotics and medication so it clears up the mastitis. Well, in the organic industry, if they did that, they would have to take that cow out of production. They couldn't sell that milk. So suddenly that cow's not making them any money. So they don't do that. They just let the mastitis fester. I interviewed large animal vets that were, in my area. I live in Sonoma County, which is north of San Francisco, about an hour north of San Francisco, where it's huge dairy country. There's a lot of dairy happening up there, and it's all this, organic and humane and, supposedly very, high quality dairy. And I had veterinarians tell me that they saw cows that were in the worst conditions, that were suffering the most from advanced mastitis on organic dairy farms. So these labels really mean nothing. You know, it's very, very sad, and consumers are really being duped. The agricultural lobby is incredibly powerful. They are at every level, state, federal, really incredibly, incredibly powerful, and it makes lawmakers concerned and standoffish to a lot of humane laws that are trying to be instated. No, they're incredibly powerful, and you know, and not only in that way, but also in manipulating the public. You know, all the advertising and nutritional information, and you know, they have so much more money than, like, say, you know, Dr. Greger or Dr. Neil Bernard, PCRM, you know, is another wonderful example of doctors that are really doing the research on the peer-reviewed wonderful studies that are out there, that again and again and again we find that animal products are detrimental to our health, and you know, on so many levels. But they're not the ones with the, you know, billions of dollars able to manipulate the public into, you know, thinking that we have to have animal products or we're going to keel over of protein deficiency. You know, so this is the myth that we're fighting against. And it's difficult, but I think that slowly we are getting there. You know, like you said, there are so many more vegans now. And I went vegan 25 years ago. And back then, I mean, you really had to want it. You know, you really had to want it. I mean, it was, you were kind of forced to be a healthy vegan, because all there was vegetables and rice and, you know, grains and fruit. If you wanted a cookie or a cake or something like that, forget it. You had to bake it. I mean, there was nothing. And it's really amazing how far we've come. We have come so far in people knowing what the word means, wherever you go, any steakhouse you walk into, you can get a vegan option. You know, it's people know, because now there's a vegan almost in every family that are influencing and growing, and it's really becoming more and more and more mainstream, let's say. And this is so important, and I really am very hopeful for the momentum that we have. I think that in just a few generations, it's possible that we could really see some dramatic change, because you know, it's no matter how powerful a government agency or a lobby is, you know, the truth will come out. The truth will prevail, I believe very much. So we'll get there. Well, I think that there's so many different angles that people can take. I mean, it's, you know, it's really not a one-size-fits-all in activism. For myself personally, you know, I am a full-time activist. I work for United Poultry Concerns, and we have all kinds of different ways that we outreach to the public with education, tabling, leafleting, presentations, all these kinds of things. So there's, you know, that kind of activism that you see, that's you know, the kind of the face of activism. So and that is incredibly important. And if that, you know, feels right and something that you would want to do, getting out there and leafleting is an easy and wonderful way to get the information into people's hands that have never heard it before. Tabling at an event is a wonderful way too, to get into a more in-depth conversation with people that are kind of wanting to hear it, coming to your table. You know, even if you feel like you could do public speaking, giving presentations, but this is of course, you know, not for everyone. And I think that you really have to go inside yourself and think, well, what are my talents? What is something that I'm good at? What's something that I could contribute? And then you find a way. If you're good at graphic design, then maybe you volunteer and help your local organization to get their graphics really gorgeous. Or, maybe you're good with social media and online stuff, and you create a blog or a website that gets the information out. There's so many different ways now to help. Maybe you're a good cook, and you decide to do some cooking demonstrations, vegan cooking demonstrations or raw food demonstrations, at your local community center. There's so many different ways. So I think that you don't want to say, oh, I could never table, that's just too much. I don't think I could, talk to people like that. Well, that's okay. There's something else that you can do. You have a talent, you have something you can contribute, find a way. So I think everyone can help. What you're asking is about when you have hens as companion animals and they're laying eggs, and you're a vegan, you don't want to eat those eggs, you shouldn't ever sell those eggs or give away the eggs. We need to stop looking at eggs as food. As long as we're looking at eggs as food, hens are going to be looked at as a food production unit, and in somewhere there's going to be exploitation. To feed 7 billion people, we can't feed 7 billion people our backyard hens' eggs. It's just not going to happen. So what to do with the eggs? A lot of sanctuaries that are keeping thousands of animals and letting them live their lives out in peace, what they do is they take the eggs, boil them, mash them up, and feed them back to the chickens. This is a very natural thing. Chickens will naturally eat their own eggs, just raw. They want to get those nutrients back. They know when the eggs are unfertilized. They know. When the eggs are unfertilized, there hasn't been a rooster, they haven't mated with a rooster to have the fertile eggs. When the eggs are fertile, they know. And they will brood, and they will, sit on the eggs, and oftentimes don't even want you to take those eggs. And will be very, resistant to you taking their fertile eggs that have a chick that's developing. But the unfertile eggs, it's like a woman's menstrual cycle. It's just a passing of an egg. So they will actually peck at the eggs and eat them. I was involved in a rescue not long ago of some chickens that were being adopted out. And we were transporting the chickens and adopting them out to good homes. And these were layers. They were just a year old, and they were rescued from an industrial large laying facility where they were really suffering. But they were just young and still layers. And in the transport crates for the 2-hour drive to the adoption event, they had laid eggs and were pecking them and eating them. So it's very natural for them to just eat those eggs. So, and then the boiling and mashing up, I think it's more of just a way to make it a little cleaner. Raw eggs are just kind of a mess. So just for cleanup and ease of them eating them, because a raw egg is mostly liquid. When you make it more of a solid with this, scrambling or whatever it is, boiling, mashing, then it's just an easier cleanup and easier for them to eat it all. Yeah, I think that we really desensitize ourselves to what's happening to these animals, to the suffering, to the abuse that's happening. People have no idea. And people have never actually gotten their hands dirty and killed an animal before. It's a brutal process, brutal, violent, horrifying process. People don't realize, it's not easy to kill an animal. And there's a whole trend now of backyard slaughter and kind of do-it-yourself slaughter, and people keep blogs and write about it, and it's really fascinating because, you'll see blogs from farmers that are growing their tomatoes or pulling their carrots, and there's never a moral question or an ethical dilemma of, picking tomatoes or pulling their carrots. That's all just, very normal and natural and happy. But then when they start talking about slaughtering their animals, chickens or rabbits now are becoming more of a meat animal, you know, in this do-it-yourself. It's interesting because you can really see the difference. People will have ethical conflicts, and they'll have all these ways of justifying things, and you know, they'll talk about, oh, you don't want to name them because that makes it harder. Well, really, we shouldn't be doing this. You know, we've got to follow the logic through. You know, I mean, obviously, if there is a moral conundrum, if we're having to soul search around killing these animals, and it's absolutely unnecessary to eat them, we live healthier, the environment's better on a vegan diet, there's no need for this. And it's interesting, you know, they'll often say, oh yeah, the first one was really hard, you know, that was just, it was brutal, terrible, but now it's getting a little easier. Well, guess what? Serial killers say that. You know, let's not desensitize ourselves to the violence of killing an animal. This is, you know, killing a young, healthy animal. It is absolutely unconscionable, and I think that we're getting it. People are waking up to it and realizing that, you know, animals shouldn't be treated poorly, that they need to be treated well, that they need space, that they need air, that they need sunshine. So all these things are great. But then to kill that animal, I mean, that's a much greater violation than maybe confining them or debeaking them. And killing them is the worst violation you could commit to someone. So I think we're going to get there. The logical progression is, if we shouldn't abuse them, we should let them live their lives naturally, well then we should not kill them. They should be allowed to live their lives, have another beautiful day of sunshine, be able to have babies, and be a mother and live their lives. And we're completely denying them that in the animal industry, so it needs to be eradicated. We need a vegan society.